Hey everyone, welcome back to Rote Reviews. We are jumping into controversial territory today, so I'd like to preface this by saying we recently had a wonderful guest, Mike Karen, say something that should color your listen to this. He
And go
said,
check out his interview if you really want to see what we're talking about. I'll put the link up here somewhere so you can go there after this episode.
yeah, please do, because it was a good interview. But he said that all gays have a spot at the table. Even if we don't agree with them or we don't understand them, they still have a spot at the table. And I would like you to keep that in mind as we jump into the controversy that is Coming Out Colton. Netflix miniseries has 6 episodes. It premiered on December 3rd, and the series follows the former football player and Bachelor star as he embarks on a journey of self-discovery coming out as a gay man, including addressing his past and embracing his place in the LGBTQ community. So, before I watched it, I would like to say that my gut sense reaction was that this was just going to be a giant publicity stunt.
I think that's what a lot of people thought.
And my dog agrees, apparently. At the end of The Bachelor, he did some pretty shady things, including stalking and putting tracking devices on Cassie Randolph's vehicle. He was called into court on it. There were some court censures in place so that he couldn't say everything he wanted to say during this series, which is important because I think there was stuff he needed to say. That said, a lot of people took his past actions, looked at the fact that he's a cis-looking white guy, and went, why does he get this platform? And so I had all of that swirling in my mind before I watched it. So I went into it with a fairly dark view.
Me too.
And I will say this. There are 2 storylines running, which I will let Baz cover in more detail. The one that caught me was Gus Kenworthy shepherding this young gay into a gay lifestyle by helping him...
Hashtag the gay Sherpa.
Right? The gay Sherpa. By helping him experience different elements of gay culture. And what I found most endearing was every time Gus took a misstep and took Colton into something where Colton wasn't comfortable, Gus pivoted and tried something else. And I really appreciated that. So from that aspect, that element of the storyline is actually something that you could share with your families and say, hey, you know, here's some of what gay culture has to face sometimes. Focusing on Colton himself, he did win me over by the end, because he not only genuinely owned up to his past crap, there was an explanation of why, and the people in his life called him to the carpet on it from a place of love, but they still called him on it, and they made him face it too. And suddenly it turned into less of a publicity stunt and more of a guy trying to turn his life around because he honestly thought he was going to die with the secret that he was gay. And the shame and guilt of it had colored all of his past actions. That's huge. And for that reason, by the end, I was actually really comfortable with the series to the point where, yeah, I think I know some people who need to watch it.
Yeah.
Your thoughts? Wait, hold on. Taz has an opinion.
Okay, right.
Thank you, buddy.
Let's get him on screen.
Oh, no, he's like your husband. He won't jump into the camera.
Right. He's probably licking his privates right now. Anyways. I won't specify which.
Amen.
Anyways. I went into this, and here I'm going to call out queer media on the carpet for this one, because this is we have nothing else to report in the gay world, but hey, Colton's going to have a TV series, and he just came out, and he did these horrible things, so let's all bash him before we even get to see what he's going to do. Yeah, queer media needs to stop with that fucking bullshit of clickbait.
Right.
Because it only makes queer media look stupid.
Right.
And I think, Queerty, I'm talking about you out there. I've been watching your posts about this show, and you are coloring it in a way that has no benefit to the queer community. And the reason why I feel so strongly about that is because this show has 2 stories, one of which Vance has highlighted, the gay Sherpa of Gus Kenworthy, who is adorable. We love him. He embraces who he is, and that's wonderful. But the other story is a story that I write about. It is the subject of my Angel of Mercy series, and that is the institutionalization of homophobia within competitive team sports. particularly in high school and going up through college, when you have your formative years. So what I liked about this series was that it could have been all about his past woes and the stuff that he did, and and he takes full ownership of that. So to all the queers out there who, oh, here's a white man just complaining about it and wants another 15 minutes of fame. No, dears, he has an important message here that is very vital and very important. And it's so important that Gus was smart enough to round up other football players, queer football players who came out, most of which came out after, although Michael Sam is there, and he was the one everybody knows during.
Right.
They were all there present to tell their stories. And I think this is the power of this show. And I think Colton, if he's smart enough in this and he has the passion for it, I think he should continue down this line of institutionalized homophobia within competitive sports. I think that's where his power could be. So Colton, if you're listening out there, I'm going to DM you about our review here, because I think this is something that is worth your effort, your money, and definitely is needed within the community. If you want a way to help the community move forward, I think you've touched on it, kid. Mm-hmm. This is it. You go through the sequences of him going back to his high school, trying to have that conversation with his coach, saying, when I was doing all of these great things that you lauded over me about, you need to know everything else that you did hurt me badly. And to watch that coach really kind of flippantly go, oh, I'm sorry if what I said made you feel bad.
It's a hard world.
Yeah, it's a hard world. Yeah, motherfucker, and you're still contributing to it.
Right.
You're not listening to what I'm saying, And unfortunately, Colton, because of that coach and athlete relationship, he does, even though Gus tells him before he goes into that, says you don't owe him anything, Colton still acts like a teenage kid. And even though he has his say, he doesn't bash his coach over the head with it.
Right.
Because of that still established relationship that he has.
Right.
And I think that's where the power of this show actually is. It's in that segment. And even when Colton kind of gets overwhelmed with the coming out party in Nashville, which I think was a complete bullshit segment. I think that episode just needed to go. There was no benefit to it. I think my husband kept saying, which one is Colton again? Because they all look the same,
I think there is one benefit that you're not seeing, and that the benefit is that there's no one way to be gay.
Well, there isn't, but we kind of know that one. There's been enough TV shows, Queer as Folk. We know that element exists.
Right, and the main character in the story was saying, that's not me. And it's okay.
Exactly.
And that's okay for that to not be me.
Yes. And so that they did color it that way by the end, but it got cringeworthy a couple of times during that night where you could just see Colton just did not want to be there.
Oh no, he retreated behind his walls big time.
Yeah, he and Gus just kind of was like, "Oh, come on," and I kind of wanted to slap the both of them and just say, one, you shouldn't have agreed to this if you knew that it was territory that was going to push you into an uncomfortable zone. And two, and they could have done something different. They could have, instead of having all these gay guys come over and so a meat hook lineup of, who do you want to sleep with? And he didn't want to sleep with any of them. They should have taken him to a drag night show or something that was fun and engaging and was still part of the queer culture, but wasn't so focused on who you're going to hook up with. You know, that shit needs to go. And it's not that I'm sex shaming our community. What I'm saying is the producers then could have been a bit more sensitive to Colton's experience and what he had been exposed to up until that point. To throw him in the middle of that. I mean, the guy's clearly game. He's game for learning. He's game for exposure. He's game for those guys. Because he went to the sex shop with Gus and he had a good time. He was being playful and, so and we learned something about him and Diego Sands. I mean, not Colton, but Gus. I was like, okay.
Right.
Okay, Miss Kenworthy. Getting that Latin D. But anyways, And I love the fact that Colton said, "Oh, my parents are going to love this episode."
Mm-hmm. And can we just say, Colton's dad is the hero of the show. For as fearful as Colton was to tell his dad, that man was there and his champion
Yes.
through the end.
He proved he was the dad that Colton had always wanted, and maybe was even there.
Right.
But Colton also, I think, framed his father in this coach mentality and wouldn't let his father
Right.
move out of that. But it's nice to see that they had reached that by the end of this series.
Right.
And so kudos to a father truly being a father for his son.
Yep.
I definitely want to applaud that. That guy did some amazing movement to have his sons back. I don't know if Colton has told his family that all of this secrecy threatened his life, that he tried to commit suicide.
He did.
Over it. And so, because I don't think he had that conversation yet with them. He told Cassidy about the fact that he was thinking of telling them, but he wasn't ready in the second episode to have that conversation.
True.
And I don't know that he has. Now, obviously, with the show being out, they know, but...
No, like episode 4 or 5, his dad made some comment about what you went through in California. I don't ever want to hear about that again. I'm pretty sure that was the reference to that.
Well, or it could be the reference that he went through the stuff with Cassie that, that was really ugly and stuff. Which, by the way, I have an update. There is an update to that part of the story that I do want to kind of put out there for people. So Colton now has a new love in his life. It is Jordan C. Brown, who was the communication director for both Hillary Clinton and I don't think it was Obama. Yeah, it was Barack Obama's campaign. So he was involved in both those Democratic campaigns. He was their communications director. So that's who he's seeing now. They've been viewed actually out on the sands in Mexico. So, good for him. I'm glad. I'm glad he finally found someone and that he's able to explore their life together, and so that's wonderful. What I will say is that, I really, while I understand why some people say, oh, why do we have to have another white gay man tell his story? I think his story was inclusive of other cultures because you have Ezra there and you have Michael there who all had the same sort of story. So right. I think the power in this series is definitely the homophobia and what it does to competitive athletes. I mean, just think if they didn't have this hanging over their head, think about how much greater they could have been because they didn't have this other thing fighting them at the same time. They could literally focus on what their task was, So I think that's where this needs to go. I think this is where the narrative needs to pivot and change and follow what the product actually was. And I do have to say, I am really impressed that they didn't go down the TMZ route of just doing a cringeworthy, oh my God, but at the same time, this does have value. It has value someplace. And if, Colton, if you are interested in doing something like this, I highly recommend you do, because I think there's a lot of athletes out there who would love to have the opportunity to explain their story and what they dealt with and, to explore how much greater could you guys have been if you didn't have all of that hanging over you. So there's that. So let's get to the ratings. This is a reality series, so when we get to script and screenplay, there really is no script or screenplay. Right. That's the idea. So probably just going to give it the medium 3.0, but know that we're not bashing it for anything. We're just saying it's not really scripted. So, all right. So my overall is a 5. The script and screenplay 3. For obvious reasons I've already stated. Sound, lighting, and score. I thought they did a really good job. It was there enough to heighten what you were watching, and it didn't detract. So I'm going to say 4.5 for that. The art direction, it was location shot. So I'm going to say 4 because they didn't have to build anything to make it seem real. The casting, I think that it was well done, with the exception of, like I said, that coming out party, which I thought was a complete cringe disaster. I think that it was great because it left a pivotal moment where Gus could literally take and say, okay, that wasn't it, let's do this. And took him to a couple who had a child. Right. And Colton got to see what he was interested in reflected back to him. And so kudos to everyone on board that made that pivot and did it immediately to give not only Colton, but also straight viewers who might catch the series how queers are varied just as much as any other part of mainstream society. So give that a 5. The direction, I don't think that it was, there was nothing bad in the direction or in the way it was photographed or shot. So I'm going to give it a 4.5 for that, because it wasn't groundbreaking, but it wasn't distracting either. Queer themes presented, 5, because of the homophobia in competitive sports that became the main narrative. And kudos to Colton for owning all his stuff, not trying to just shove it aside, but he let that heat come back at him, and he dealt with it, So kudos to him for doing what he could legally. I guess the other part of the update that I have on that is that the restraining order was lifted shortly before they went into production for this, but with the understanding that she wanted to remain as separate as possible from the narrative he was now telling. So that's why you never have the Colton and Cassie kind of discussion. It wasn't that there was a restraining order still in place. That was rescinded because of a mutual agreement that whatever Colton did going forward was going to be all Colton, and he would leave her out of it. So that's kind of why it is what it is, which I found rather interesting. So they came to an agreement. So evidently, both parties are now part and parcel of what we now see. They have an understanding, and Colton's sticking to it. So good for him. Mm-hmm. So those are my overall is a 4.75.
All right. Mine's very similar to yours. Overall production, a 4. It's a reality series. Location shots, again, no sets or anything. Script screenplay, again, 3. I don't know how else to rate a reality show. Sound lighting score, 4. It was well lit. The music did what it needed to do, and then my socks weren't blown off. Same thing with art direction and costuming. Exactly what it needed to be for real people running around telling Colton's business. Yeah, right. Casting, 4. Again, these were the real people in his life, so it's not like you could have cast actors in this place.
Right.
But the reason I bumped it up,
the reason I bumped it up, people.
Yeah, the reason I bumped it up from a 3 is because there were some choices, like the other NFL players or the drag queen of that they chose to come and play with him.
I wanted more of her.
Oh, she was fantastic. Directing is where I deviate from you, and I drop down a bit. I give it a 3 because of the 2 storylines, and I don't think they were woven well enough. It felt really disjointed.
Good point.
And so you would be following like the gay Sherpa storyline. All of a sudden, bam, a sports storyline would hit you out of left field. Pardon the pun. So I felt the director could have woven those better. So I only gave it a 3. Queer themes presented, 5. More than just the homophobia in sports, you got to see little segments of all sorts of different gay lives. You got to see a married gay couple with children. You got to see
and hear their story.
And hear their story.
What they went through to get that child.
Right. You got to meet a drag queen with Colton for the first time. You got to see a stereotypical gay party. You got to see 2 gay friends from Cassie's point of view come and ream him out in a bar with their little drinks in their little hands.
Right. Yeah. Blushes.
I know. But you also got to see, gay NFL player. I mean, I give it a 5 because it covered so much.
It did.
That really, I think it's of everything we've ever reviewed, it has the most topics involved in it. Yep. And the one we totally forgot, religion. He has a falling out with the Catholic Church, but is picked up by an LGBTQ church.
Well, there's one in between, a mediary that he kept trying to hold on to. And Gus's and his brother's credit, they held his feet to the fire and say, why do you want to keep being a part of this? You've offered them all of yourself. And yet,
they've rejected you, but they kept the money.
Right.
But yeah, line. Oh, his brothers, that was the best line ever. Queer themes presented, 5 because they covered so much. So personal overall rating, a 4.
Excellent. Well, that's it for this week, guys. Remember to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about it. Also, check out our swag shop. We have a Drag You line and a queer author quote line, the Pride series. Something up there for everyone. You can get it in mouse pads or aprons or what have you. I've got it all up on there, and there are more coming. So keep checking that part out as well. And until then, this is Issy Bass Collins.
I'm Bass Bastion, wishing you a happy holidays and a very warm start to your year.
And we'll see you all after this. Take care.
Bye.
Oh, what's that? Closing time. The bums rush in Melody, dear.